If we run out of time and I haven't raised your question, I'll contact you personally and connect you to the most appropriate departmental representative. And lastly, at the end of the session, please take the time to complete a short 10-second poll. So let's get started. Hi, James, how are you?
Hi, Ashley. That's a very kind introduction. Great to see you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So perhaps give our viewers a quick overview of your role in the office and how you help South Australian companies.
Yeah, so it's great to see everyone tuning in. Thank you for making the time. So my name's James Mraz, Regional Director in the UK and Europe. I've been based here for just over 4 years now, 4.5 years. So I basically came just before Brexit. And have had to put up with that since. But no, it's been a fantastic time. I'm originally from Adelaide, as Ashley alluded to, born and bred. Started as an accountant and worked my way through private equity, and then I've been with government for about 8 years now. But in my role with the Office of the Agent General, I lead a team of 6 people with the Agent General Bill Muirhead. Our role is quite simple. It's to create jobs in South Australia. And how do we do that? We do that by attracting companies and capital to set up in South Australia. And we also help companies exporting who are already exporting or who are looking to export into the UK and Europe. So it's a relatively simple remit, but difficult in execution. So we work really closely with the Department for Trade and Investment onshore and all the sector teams, and also TradeStart to make that happen. In the UK, SA means Saudi Arabia or South Africa. So we're really aware that we must push South Australia or Adelaide. So we intrinsically link Adelaide with the name South Australia. And I guess in the UK and Europe, Australians are known as optimistic people, right? They're friendly. And so people like to do business with people they like. So we really play on that and, try and, I guess, convey that friendly attitude with people we deal with. So in terms of the relevance to the audience today, it's a lot of exporters who have signed on. I want to talk about, I guess, our main category is wine. With over 65% of our exports from South Australia to the UK representing wine. Our role is to build relationships across the value chain on your behalf effectively. So we have relationships with importers, distributors, retailers, journalists, influencers, the government. And it's all about providing a soft introduction or soft landing for when you do come here and you want to start a business or start a relationship. We've got a really agile, can-do team, young people, and we also have some experience on the other end. But we're really passionate about what we do, and we read the Advertiser every day. We read In Daily. We read the Australian. We're really plugged into what's going on in Australia, but also in the UK, and we try and marry that up and find opportunities. Over the past 2 months, we've been hosting a TV show called South Australia Live, which is just another way to interact with people during lockdown. There's a lot of webinars and these sorts of things on display, but we thought a TV show might be another way of connecting with people in their own time through Instagram and other channels like that. We're proud to say it's produced in-house. Gemma Kilby, our trade and communications manager, does a great job. It's one person show, but we've got some terrible actors on there like myself and some of the other team, but we make it work. And I guess the beauty of that show is we're using it to showcase our exporters. So we've had Detmold on there. We've got a special lineup this week, actually, so I won't reveal that. But we've had a lot of wine companies on there. So we're really proud to have people participate in that. And it's raw. It's just done on on your iPhone. So we're really proud of that. But yeah, I'd just like to say, really happy for people to connect with us. Please do reach out. We're available on all channels. And Ashley and the team are also pushing leads through to us. So don't hesitate to get in contact.
That's great, James. Fantastic. You elaborated on some of the sectors there that you're working on. Perhaps you might like to provide a bit of an oversight of some of the projects you're currently working on. Perhaps without naming names, you might like to elaborate on some success stories.
Yeah, of course. So I feel very lucky because we have a very diverse job. We get to deal with many different businesses and keep that connection with South Australia. So as I alluded to earlier, we do a lot of work with wineries, and what does that look like? I think it'd be interesting for you guys to understand how we actually add value here. a lot of it is in our networks and who we know and how we can provide an introduction. But actually, as a direct result of these webinars, we've had 2 great leads come through. And again, without naming names, we've had one company who are looking to set up a business in Belgium. So we're able to connect them with our effectively investment attraction counterparts and some other private sector contacts in that space to try and progress that relationship. And I guess as we're all doing at the moment, we're communicating on video calls. And I must admit, I almost feel better connected, even though I am in lockdown in my house. I can get to a lot of people, both in Europe and the UK, and also back into Australia. So in that example, we're able to connect them with some helpful counterparts in Belgium. With another winery, they were seeking introductions with UK retailers, and we're able to, utilising our extensive networks, and that, I guess, comes from across the whole team, actually. We do spend a lot of time networking when we could, and I guess we're having to, we do these things instead, but we're able to leverage those relationships, and that's been really effective for us. In another case, with another winery, we connected them with a luxury tour operator, and they were able to do an exclusive garden party with them. So it was just getting them in front of a different type of consumer. We're very conscious of matching. It is a simple proposition in that we're marrying up buyers and sellers, and we want to get them at the right level, so the right price point, the right category. Other companies we've worked with are in spirits. So obviously gin is sort of taking over the world at the moment. We've worked with some gin distilleries in South Australia to connect them with some retailers, which has been quite effective. Debt Pack, which I can mention because it's a bit more public. We worked with them over the last year to help them with a new recyclable coffee cup concept they've got. And there's a huge opportunity in the UK for this. I'd say the UK is a little bit behind Australia in terms of how much coffee we drink per capita, because you still have your famous Yorkshire tea here, but there is a strong movement, a strong growth in that direction. And so our team thought of some new ideas on how we could try and get the debt mold recyclable coffee cup out in front of consumers. And so we worked with a large Australian coffee chain here called Taylor Street Barista. We actually set up a pop-up coffee shop out the front of Australia House, just inside the bounds of the property during the election week. So we're able to capture a lot of customers, Australians walking past, who are doing their voting. So we're open to doing lots of different things and new things just to try and push the South Australian story, really. If I talk about another company that's not in, I guess it's in a software space, so more intangible, we've been working with them for the last 6 months, and they're seeking to sell software into the energy markets in UK and Europe. And from a business development perspective, wearing my government hat, I find it a little bit easier to get indoors. So having come from the private sector, doing a cold call can be quite difficult because immediately people are suspicious. But when someone from the government calls a contact on behalf of these companies, they're generally interested to hear what you have to say, because foreign governments, a little bit curious, a little bit interesting. And so we've had some great success in getting to contacts that some of these companies haven't been able to get to. So we're really proud of that, and we actually really enjoy working with those companies. It's very satisfying for us to get those outcomes, because that ultimately is what will lead to more sales and hopefully employing more people in South Australia.
Oh, that's some really great success stories there in itself. So well done to our London team. I see you're still working from home, so it looks restrictions are still very much in place. Perhaps you can give us a bit of an update on the UK and maybe how it relates to our exporters.
Absolutely. Yeah, so actually it's we're 10th or 11th week now. So we went into a hard lockdown on the 23rd of March, which was just very restrictive, not dissimilar to what was happening in South Australia. But I'm pleased to say from today, they're starting to lift the restrictions in a measured way. So at least in England, from today, you can have 6 people from different households who can meet in an outdoor space, but observing, of course, social distancing. The rules slightly differ across Scotland, Ireland and Wales, just for, I guess, environmental reasons. People who can work from home must continue to do so. So generally white collar, will continue to work from home for the foreseeable future. Part of that is driven by the I guess congestion that will occur in public transport, and so it's trying to allow other workers to get to their place of work without the pressure of a lot of office workers. So I foresee that we might be in working from home at least till August, September. But I'm happy to say that the team, at least in London, and I'd say all the other states and Australia House, have pivoted really well. We've, like I said earlier, I feel better connected to Adelaide. I feel better connected to some of the other people I couldn't get to, because you know that a lot of people are available. They're not busy traveling. They're at home. So people will find time to meet with you, which is really positive. Interestingly, today schools are going to open. So primary schools, year 1 to 6, will open, and then secondary schools will. Today, and then the 15th of June we'll see secondary schools commence, and then all non-essential retailers, department stores, independent shops will open from the 15th of June. So we're going to start. That's with social distancing. So we are going to see, which I mentioned in one of the previous webinars, a change in the customer journey, the way stores are configured. A lot of one-way aisles and perspex and those sorts of things. But I guess retailers are adapting and moving forward with that. Pubs and restaurants and hotels will open from the 4th of July. That is going to be a bit more challenging because there'll be social distancing that has to be complied with there. So we'll see how that plays out. But I guess it's different in the UK in that you can drink outside on the street. So that might even become more prolific. Who knows? Another observation, this is different to Australia, is we haven't had a here for people coming into the UK, and they are just about to put one in the next few days, and that will go for 14 days. And it's questionable as to why it's taken so long, but the argument has been that because there was significant transmission in the UK anyway in the natural population, the number of arrivals wasn't expected to have a huge impact. But now that we have got the R number or R naught down, they believe that this is the right time to start implementing some of those measures. What I might do actually I'll just quickly talk a little bit about the wine sector as it relates to before and after, just to give a bit of context. So at the beginning of the year, there was really positive, I guess, economic wins behind us in terms of we have commenced with Brexit. We're in the transition phase. We're going through an 11-month negotiation period, which we're still in. Consumer confidence was improving, and other economic indicators like GDP were starting to improve. So we're in a really positive position. But specifically in the wine sector, we have seen a bit of a change in customer preference and consumer preferences. This is pre-COVID. This is the 16 to 24-year-old age group. Have started moderating their consumption of wine. They've been pivoting towards low alcohol and no alcohol beverages, which is an interesting observation that's kind of been exacerbated post-COVID. But I guess the important thing to note is Australian wine was still the most popular in the off-trade to the year ending December 2019. It represented 22% of sales, so it's a major proportion, almost double the second-placed country, which is Italy. Supermarkets are the major distribution channel, and Australian wine represents about 22% of that share. Now, if we look at after COVID, actually, it's quite interesting. So from the week ending 22nd of March, off-trade alcohol sales experienced a 60% increase. So there was a huge spike. You look at all the charts, that was also in groceries and other products, but alcohol sales substantially increased. And you saw the value of sales decrease across some other categories like beer, but then there's been a rebound. So it declined the next week and then it rebounded. So it's sort of been quite bumpy, but now I guess we can say it's plateaued a little bit. There's normality, even though it's a pretty unique period, there is some normality and those sales have started to flatten. But what I would say, across the wine community, UK producers and importers and distributors have had to move quickly to manage supply. There have been reports that shelf space for wine has significantly reduced, which is true because we're seeing supermarkets prioritise essentials products. And there's also been a bit of a simplification of product ranges, and there's been a strong theme of loyalty. So those existing relationships have been really, really strong and gotten stronger, which does make it difficult for new entrants. But I would say there are opportunities. It's just being strategic about it. Another thing, just a quick observation around, obviously naturally events are no longer occurring, so we're not seeing the London Wine Fair and Pro Wine have been delayed to next year. I guess it's difficult to see how much of an impact coronavirus has had on wine shipments, for example. There were some sort of congestion periods and some challenges at, say, customs warehouses with staff who have been furloughed, and we've certainly noticed that in a lot of our contacts that we speak to and distributors and others have furloughed quite a lot of their staff. So we're still maintaining relationships, but hopefully that will change soon. So I guess in summary on this point, in regards to the wine category, it is difficult to get into new product ranges at the moment, but I also think now is the right time to start the discussions. Companies are going to be looking. I've noticed across a lot of webinars and conferences in the last few weeks that companies are starting to pivot from, I guess, sort of damage control and just maintaining minimal viable operation to looking to the future. This is across a range of sectors, but companies are now looking to growth. So how can they grow and how can they trade out of this period? And so I think we're more than happy to work with anyone who reaches out to us to start those discussions. On average, to get into it, for example, a supermarket can up to 6 months. So it is a lot. But just like to reiterate, our team is well placed to connect with these people and sort of advocate on your behalf.
So you have actually just touched on a question, because as a reminder to our viewers, very interactive Q&A format this round. So please submit any questions. We've got a couple already flowing through. So Mark Cosned, you've already just mentioned, James, about facilitating introductions. Staying on that wine conversation, he's just curious about what the talk is on the street about the number of distributors who will survive COVID-19, and of those that survive, will you be able to support them in making introductions?
Hi, Mark. I've actually met Mark before, so it's lovely to hear from you. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really difficult to tell how it's going to play out at the moment. There's a lot of government schemes in place that run right through to September, October, that are providing these furlough relief programs for staff. So those programs will continue to support those distributors and keep them on life support to an extent. And there is a huge amount of consumption going on in the off trade. Certainly, on trade is zero at the moment, but there has been such a large increase in the off trade that I think there's enough activity to sustain those businesses, at least in this immediate period, with those people who have been furloughed. Post that period, that's when it's become perhaps a little bit more difficult, and no one has that crystal ball as to how we come out of this recovery. But we are optimistic. I would say, Brits are extremely resilient people, like Australians, that they that keep calm and carry on attitude does come through in a lot of the conversations I have with people. So I'm optimistic that we won't see too many casualties, but our role is to keep those relationships and keep companies like Mark's up to date with who they should speak to and save some of that legwork. But yeah, we remain optimistic, and Mark, please do get in touch with us if you want to start some conversations. We can sort of do that litmus test and find the right people to speak to.
There you go, Mark. James has offered his support, so please reach out. The next question is from a person that is no stranger to you, James, our own Deputy Chief Executive, Megan Ancliffe. She's actually interested in hearing your views, James, on consumer preferences in the UK. Perhaps any views on where the post-COVID changes might be beyond wine, although super interesting insights already. What broader trends are emerging?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really difficult to draw insights at the moment in terms of longer term insights, because it's been such a shock to the economy, and we've seen well, really unprecedented change in terms of the on-trade just switching off. And so people have started to pivot. I guess initially, as we went into lockdown, people started filling up their freezers, filling up their pantries with staples like rice and frozen goods, because there's sort of that people are legitimately scared, I guess, about getting access to things. We didn't have a shortage of toilet paper, I'm happy to say, but people did have really pivoted towards cooking at home. So there's been and that part of that was a challenge in terms of getting access to delivery services. There was already a large takeaway network, but what a lot of people do, at least in London, is buy ready-made meals. So you buy something you can put in the oven for 20 minutes and you're good to go. That has certainly declined. So people have more time to cook at home. So we have seen an explosion in cooking shows and people just taking the time to spend that time with their family because they have to, I guess, to try new things at home. So you've seen a big increase in fresh produce consumption. That said, there are challenges in the supply chain around getting access to workers. So, for example, in the UK, a lot of going actually into the picking season for salads and other fruits and vegetables, there's a huge migrant community that come over to sustain that workforce. And the last I heard, we had about 30 to 40% of the necessary workforce. So there are some interesting solutions around trying to shore that up. But you hear some other shocking stories actually about in Europe, where I think it was in the Netherlands, they've got millions of tons of potatoes that are not being bought because that goes to the on-trade, to fries and to chips and in restaurants. So we're seeing some huge shocks in different product categories, I guess. I think when we return to work, there will be a softening in consumption of, say, ready-made meals, because there might be a pivot towards people working from home more. So I think that will probably change for the longer term. But yeah, it's a bit of a wait and see at the moment.
Some really good insights there. Fantastic. When we're talking about free trade agreements, what's the latest with regards to this proposed agreement between Australia and the UK?
Yeah, so exciting times for us. Now that we have triggered Brexit in the UK, there's an ability to actually start negotiating with other countries, which they've kicked off with the US, and they've started a dialogue with Japan. I'm pleased to say Australia will be commencing formal negotiation in the middle of this month, middle of June, middle to late June. So both respective ministers for trade and investment and the high commissioners from both countries will be doing a launch event the second half of this month. And our office will be sort of involved in that and some of the PR. But yeah, so that's really positive. We're quite excited about that because free trade agreements create a lot of opportunity for new way of thinking, new way of doing business. On average, a free trade agreement with Australia can take 5 to 7 years, but we're really optimistic. The most recent, one of the more recent ones with Peru, only took 5 months to negotiate. I think because there's similarity in terms of rule of law between Australia and the UK, and just cultural similarity, it should be able to be done quicker. We are noticing in the UK bureaucracy that they've started to reallocate resources from COVID-19 response back towards these sorts of initiatives. So we're optimistic they'll have the capacity and certainly the willingness to push ahead with this free trade agreement. It's sort of expected once we do hit a drop-dead date with Brexit at the end of this year that they'll have several free trade agreements ready to go. So that's really positive for Australia.
It is positive news. Very exciting for you to play a part in it anyway. We've still got a few more minutes, so if you've got any burning questions, please submit them through. Otherwise, James and I can keep talking for the rest of the afternoon. But please be in mind that we did establish a capped time of half an hour, which finishes up here at 6 o'clock South Australian time. My final question here at the moment, James, is what opportunities do you see for Australia with the UK?
So yeah, I guess free trade. I guess the free trade agreement is going to be the big catalyst for a lot more activity between the two countries. But there are some other projects on the side or adjacent to this that are going on that are quite exciting and create some optimism. So one I'll talk about is the space bridge that's been created between the UK and Australia, and that's being led by the respective national space agencies. Our office was involved in the sort of genesis of that idea with the Satellite Applications Catapult in Harwell. It effectively is a mechanism to provide regulator to regulator contact, industry to industry, academia to academia, to facilitate more commerce and investment and trade between the two jurisdictions. There's a really positive article in the Advertiser, I think it was over the weekend, talking about the Australian space industry and how South Australia is capturing a huge component of that $2 billion industry. And so we're working with a client at the moment who are looking to set up in South Australia in potentially Lot 14, and they're working through the landing pad initiative, which is really exciting. That's getting good traction. It's created quite a bit of a buzz actually here, and when we talk about it, and it's not only when we talk about it because we're paid to do that, but I think the industry is starting to feed back from some of the interactions and between UK companies with Australian counterparts in South Australia. So that's a really positive thing that will happen irrespective of any free trade agreement that will go on, and we want to support that as much as we can because we see space as a huge growth industry. Depending on how the free trade agreement plays out, there could be much better access for some of our meat, which would be a really good outcome for us. I think it's important that we look to diversify with our trading partners across the world, and the UK is the third largest investor into Australia, and Australia's the second largest investor in terms of the destinations we invest into the UK. So we have a really strong relationship. And we culturally get along so well. So it is easy to do business, and these sorts of forums are easy to connect on in lieu of physically meeting.
Okay, thanks, James. We have got two more questions. We'll try and skip over them quite quickly. So, James, perhaps other than the UK, what other countries in Europe are good markets for Australian wine?
Yeah, good question. So I think we have really good brand sort of recognition in France. Like, surprisingly, obviously it's a very competitive market there, but I guess in terms of a new world wines, we have really strong reputation there. And I've been working with the sort of Penfolds representative in France for quite a long time now, and he has great traction in terms of, if you consider Australia versus many other countries that are importing into France, we get really good penetration there. Scandinavia is also an interesting one, and that's a different market in terms of the way you buy alcohol. So I think that's a good market to look into, and then Italy as well. I'll come back to you with some stats to support that. But in terms of our interaction, we've had a good response there.
That's great. So Matthew Curran asked that question. So we can contact you, Matthew. We'll have your details on file here. And the lucky last question is from Mark again, Mark Cosnett. Just another question. Speaking of Brexit and the free trade agreement, the WSTA is reporting that Australian wine will still have a tariff upon entry in the UK. Is the South Australian government lobbying to exclude Australian wine from the tariff as part of the FTA?
Yeah, so in terms of the way free trade agreements are negotiated, there's obviously a federal negotiating team who deal with the respective counterparts in the UK. But underneath that team, the states put submissions into the federal government. So absolutely, South Australia will be making representations to the federal government. This is almost one of our firm components we need to have included, that there are no tariffs. We're optimistic that won't be the case, because Chile got a really positive, well, they have very low, or if not no tariffs coming into the UK. So there is a precedent for this. There is some complexity with the way UK negotiates with Europe, because they're also negotiating an agreement to exit. That might have implications if they don't have an agreement on the agreement with Australia. So there are many balls up in the air at the moment, but absolutely, to answer your question, South Australia will be making and is making those representations to the feds, who will then relay that in their negotiations.
That's great to hear. Well done. James, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been wonderful chatting with you. We're so lucky to have you as our state's regional director in the UK. It's been great.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great. So yeah, I hope our attendees have found the information useful, and perhaps you might like to even connect directly with James in the future. He said he'd love to hear from you, so reach out. That's it. We've come to the end. Please do take the time to complete the short poll that's coming on screen. Let us know what you thought of this new format. We do listen to your feedback. Love to hear your suggestions for future topics. Lastly, hope you can join us this coming Wednesday, the 3rd of June at 3:30 South Australia time for our Malaysia Global In-Market webinar. We'll hear from Malaysia Australia Business Council and AusCham ASEAN representatives, as well, of course, our own South Australian representative. Remember, head to our website for information on upcoming webinars or view previous recordings. And lastly, South Australian Government is here to support you. Reach out to us. We have such a strong number of South Australian trade investment officers and representatives located overseas. We work closely with the federal government, in particular Austrade. We have excellent locally based staff and my fellow departmental colleagues, such as international market teams, sector focus teams, trade start advisors. We're all here to help you and support you. So thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to see you here online again soon. Have a great day, evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, James. See you.